Okay.
Welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, J.R. Stewart.
And good evening, everyone. I am your co-host, Tommy Duncan. Welcome.
Welcome, and we want to give a big shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music. Also, the chat line is open, and the phone line will be open in about 5 minutes. If you want to
So,
dial in a call, the number is 972-497-2280, and the information is also in the lower left part of the screen. So, Tom, where do we start tonight?
you know what? There's a lot going on in our country right now while we're still in the midst of the presidential and senatorial and every other type of election you can think of. This is kind of the big ticket item this week, and obviously we don't have all the answers right now, but we did start this conversation last week and talked about some things that were going on within our community. And obviously, this time of the year, we talk a lot about politics
Yes.
every couple of years. And so, we needed to finish off, I believe, our conversation. We talked a little bit about the opportunity zones that were part of the Trump Tax Cut Act a few years back. But then also, we need to talk a little bit about, where the black community is going on in particular. As two black men who are talking about the most provocative issues going on in our community. We have obviously, a lot of history to deal with, but ultimately we've got to figure out where the future is in retrospect to what we have lived through in the past.
Well, Tom, we have to. I did what you said. So we're going to have to decide once and for all if we're going to be a free people or not. I am not delighted or happy, and not that I have anything against our Latino, Hispanic brothers and sisters. I'm happy for their success and the things that they're doing, but their population is not much larger than ours. We tend to have an educational lead over them, but yet they have more wealth than we do. I mean, they certainly are doing the things to grow the economic base in their communities and own those economies and spend money with each other while we continue to fail to do these things for economic success. So the answer is: are we going to continue to be, breastfed by the government, or overly rely on government assistance, or are we going to get back to doing the things that we did before integration and the I guess a tipping point of the civil rights movement, back when we took control over our economies? We had more of a sense of urgency to do this. I don't see that sense of urgency now, and I know you and I talked about it many times, and we agree on most of the points, except I just don't believe that we're going to find the will to get it done. I really hope that I'm wrong. I really hope black folks wake up one day and prove me wrong, but it's looking like, Tom, we're going to be second class, third class, fourth, and fifth as the Indian population growing wealth, the African population here growing wealth. We already see what the Caribbeans are doing here in America. And how in the hell that we've been in here suffering through this and helping make America great, and we're going to be last at the damn table to the feast on the beast, on the turkey.
Well, Jim, you bring up a very good point. And, quite frankly, when I speak to this, I'm speaking more so about hope than evidence. And I'm going back to the church, having faith and hope more so than I am seeing evidence, to your point. There was a point in time, Jimmy, where you and I both know that, even though it was in the midst of segregation,
Yes.
legal, violently enforced segregation in America, there was a point in time after, of course, the Emancipation Proclamation, the freedom of the slaves, where black folks, slowly and painfully built its own economies. Even though, unfortunately, we were second or third class citizens, and quite frankly, some folks may have thought that we were below even cattle and chickens and hogs that they owned, and probably treated them better than black folks did too. But we had businesses, we had communities. They were legally segregated, but we owned the factors that created jobs within our community, that created economies in our community. And quite frankly, we lost that after integration. We lost that after the Civil Rights Act. We lost that after the Voting Rights Act of 1964 and 1965, when we all of a sudden had an open door, even though people might not have liked us coming through the front door. We had a right to go through the front door. But unfortunately, we lost our businesses. And I hate to say this, but we failed the black business infrastructure and community that we had built over
Yes, we did.
generations. And there's no one else that you can blame but us.
So, so,
Now, to,
so
to your to your question is, do we see a do we see a future that would rebuild us being the primary builders of our economy, the primary creators of jobs that are employing our people? I don't see very much evidence right now, Jimmy. And so that begs the question: is the black community a permanent underclass at this point?
Tommy, it may be. I hate to have to accept that, um, because I know that we're capable of making a difference. I know that we've done it before on the much worse conditions, so I know that we can do it. I guess my problem is that I just don't see anyone with a national voice trying to motivate us in that direction. Like, for example, I hear black farmers say that they don't get their fair share of the farm subsidies from the USDA. And my question is, with all these mom and pop boutique farms popping up to give you, you know, grain fed, no hormones, you know, I don't know, raised out in the field kind of beef, chicken, and pork. Why? I mean, why are we not tapping into that market? Why are we so dependent? Or do black people not eat meat in this country? Can our black farmers not come together and package up some meat and sell it to the black grocery store, the black community? Can black folks just not open a butcher shop and start providing goods and services to our people? Does everything have to come through white people and white businesses or Korean businesses or Asian businesses to provide goods and services in the black community?
This is the challenge that I think that person is talking to, that is getting access to certain markets. So we've talked in the past about the hair care industry, the multi-billion-dollar hair care
Yes,
industry
which we
that
don't
our
control.
community, yeah, exactly. And we don't have, in my opinion, the intestinal fortitude. I guess since we're talking about women, we don't have the self-esteem to make a personal or community sacrifice to run somebody else out of business to put us in business.
Tom, that's very deep to say that. And so what do we do about this now? I mean, I think the black middle class has to own this problem, um, because the wealthy blacks are only going to do so much, and many of those are professional athletes who are going to be broken 3 or 4 years after they get out of the game. So they're not trying to do it. That's not to say that they won't build a park or offer some scholarships, but when it comes to economic investment, they're not putting their dollars in the black community. They'll put it in the white community to open up a store, a restaurant, or invest in something. I don't know if you remember many years ago, and this is not to shame Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's a great person, but I
Right.
remember years ago when he had gone broke. And basically, he had to come back to basketball because he was broke. He had put his money into a lot of investments, none of which were in the black community. And so when he went broke, I mean, I didn't feel sorry for him because he's had more chances than the average black person will ever have. But also, you can find your way to invest your money into white ventures, but somehow you can't put a dollar into the community that supports you that you just came from. So I generally have a problem with that. So I think black folks in the black middle class, if it's going to get done, tell them the black middle class is going to have to come together to get it done. We have to own economic development in the black community. We can't just
Well,
take our money and success and run away from our communities and never look back.
Jimmy, I would like to say that the black middle class would take ownership of that, but quite frankly, I think the black middle class is a little bit too committed to corporate America. They are a little bit too committed to what has actually put us in this position in the first place. And when I say that, I'm not saying all of the black middle class, but I would likely say that we have got to leverage folks who are outside of the mainstream, because when I think black middle class, I think mainstream. But what that means is, I got a comfortable job working for a decent company. I got a comfortable paycheck that I can count on every couple of weeks, and I don't want to mess that up. As opposed to folks who are on the outside and the fringe of that, who may be a little bit poor, who may be folks who are incarcerated right now. It may even be our next generation, younger people who, saw their parents go through working for 20, 25 some odd years for a company to get laid off. And then all of a sudden they're trying to figure out what to do. And they figured, they decided they don't want to sign up for that. So we may have to figure out folks outside of the fringe. We may, go figure, have to leverage the millennials. We may have to leverage folks who are typically looked over and who are not what some people called, I forgot what the book is called, the good blacks, who are, they say the right thing, they do the right thing, they're politically correct, but they may be a little bit too comfortable to drive this type of revolution.
Well, Tom, I mean, I've heard stories and seen documentaries on micro loaning in India, where people actually go and they don't go to a bank, they go to an institution that's been set up to get a $200 loan to buy a sewing machine so they can, and sew and make some money. Some of the loans don't even exceed $1,000. But these people repay these loans back at an astronomical rate. To default on one of these loans is almost unheard of. And they're able to create some economic development in their little village or their little community to bring some money in doing small tasks. And so we may have to look at trying to do something similar to this time. I'm thinking that surely the black middle class can come up with a few $1,000s here and there to invest in the dream of somebody. Um,
Now that Jimmy, you bring up a very provocative idea, because most folks who've been in the middle class for a period of time usually have what we call disposable income. They got a few
yes,
extra dollars that are set aside, even though we know by recent statistics this year, within the last year, if my numbers are correct, I know well over 60, maybe even 70% of Americans in general don't even have $1,000 in savings.
that is true,
But
Tom.
when you look at the middle and upper middle class, they do have some discretionary income. They do have some retirement savings. Now, they may not be entrepreneurs. They may not be able to build the next Facebook or Google. But you know what? They can put their money into a fund that could help empower and unleash the potential of folks who aren't afraid to go out there and, with the right business plan, make some things happen. And you have a win-win.
Well, Tom, along that line, I've been calling for us to do something similar to that, but not a few people. I mean, if you get 100 people together who can afford to give up $1,000 a year. I'm not talking about your mortgage money, your rent money, your car payment money. We're talking really $20 a week is what it comes down to. $80 a month for 12 months, that puts you close to $1,000, $980 for the year. Um,
Okay. So you're
So
doing the math on that. You got $100,000. What do you do with that?
you take that $100,000, and you take it and you open a business in the inner city. That becomes your next small mom and pop convenience store. The next chicken shack if you want to open up a food restaurant, fast food, a burger place, maybe a clothing shop, a shoe store, something to start providing the goods and services. And that business is going to start off with 100 customers, because I think if you put your money in there, you'd want to go back and spend your money there to help promote it. Somewhere in that group is going to be an attorney, an accountant, a marketing person, a web developer. You're going to have access to some skills that you don't have to go to the marketplace and buy, because your investment group will already have some of those skills. And now, for as an ownership, the investment group can still own it, and you can find someone who may be interested in managing or work out some type of lease purchase option program where so much of the profit goes back to the investment group, and then over 5 or 6 years, if you run this successfully, and we can make our money back, plus some interest, then we sign the business over to you. You just keep it and keep going. And we take our profits and our money that we collect every year and put into another business venture. So we slowly make return on our investment while helping develop businesses and business ownership in the inner city where we need some help.
No, I mean that is actually an interesting idea, because really there's only two ways you get. Either you're giving them a loan or you're asking for equity.
This would be sweat equity, is basically what it's going to come down to. Plus, you also have 100 people that's going to be looking over your shoulder to make sure that you're making good decisions, to check the inventory. I mean, it's not one of those deals where you just get into and walk away and wait for the money to come in. I guess some due diligence would be involved from any of the investors who want to be more actively involved in the business itself. I mean, yeah, maybe one of the investors become the owner manager, or to help manage the place until we find someone. But either way, whether we directly manage the business and grow it ourselves, or reach out to someone who has an interest in business but just don't know how to raise the capital, don't know how to run the books, but hell, they make a hell of a good chicken sandwich. Then let's take that person and find a way to help them get off the ground.
And Jimmy, this is okay. So in the United States of America,
Mm-hmm.
the last time I recall, there were about 40 million black folks in America out of what,
50,
350.
60 million, yes.
I think there are about 40 million black folks. Okay, Jimmy, I don't know of one national chain that is operated focused on our eating habits. We have
Right,
local chains,
right.
but not one. 40 million people, not one chain. I mean, first thing that might come to mind, okay, you talk about chicken, that's fine. You got Popeyes, you got KFC, you got, you, what is it? All of these other places.
Right.
There are some regional places that are doing pretty well, but not one national, not one grocery store. Now,
That's
Jimmy,
true, Tom. We don't feed ourselves.
not grocery store.
Yes, that's
Most of the
true.
clothing places, we like to dress.
Yes,
Not one. Now we do have a lot of designers who are in the market, but at the end of the day, not one clothing. And we're not talking about it has to be brick and mortar. The beauty of where
no,
we
no,
are
you're
right
right. It could be
now,
online. It could be virtual.
exactly. So when we consider the economic opportunity here, and the challenge is, we talked maybe 20 years ago, and we're talking about how to move back into our own communities. Well, I can pretty much tell you that on the most part, that's not going to happen. You got other folks who are moving into our communities and pushing our folks out before you have us moving into our communities, because other folks control the politics better and are more politically savvy to figure out, how am I going to go into East Austin or South Dallas or into the third ward? Well, now, you know what? There's a lot of cream in the coffee out there, and you got a lot of women who are walking their dogs, and they don't look like our women.
That is true, Tom. And like I said, that's money that's being sucked out of the black community, not being reinvested, not giving you a job. And we have to be more savvy about where we spend our money. Now, this is not being prejudiced. This is not racism. This is about group survival. And other groups look out for members of their group. They don't consider themselves racist or prejudiced because they have a focus on group survival. Nor should we. We shouldn't be. We shouldn't even be embarrassed to talk this way. But there are some people that will say, "Oh, you shouldn't have these conversations out in public." Well, why not? But you're absolutely right. So we need our young people to step up and get us to more of a online presence where virtual stores have a lot of the same capabilities as brick and mortar stores. I mean, you look at Walmart with the number of stores that they have around the country and the world, and Amazon, who outsells them by maybe 120 billion. I think Walmart's like an $800 billion a year company, and Amazon's almost reaching $1 trillion or getting close to it. And so and Amazon doesn't have any physical stores. They have warehouses, but all their presence is online as far as where they deliver their goods and services. So we need to take advantage of that because maybe we don't have the money to build a store, but we can certainly build one online, and people can go because we've gotten used to ordering things online. There's some people do all their shopping online, have it delivered. So we can tap into that model and start delivering goods and services. So for those people who make clothes, why not open a black mall and put some black stores in there to sell clothes, tennis shoes? We need to open up some food stores. These black farmers, if you're complaining, sitting around waiting for the government to give you a check and be fair with you, yeah, you may be waiting a long time for that to happen. But black people, last time I checked, buy a lot of meat also. So our black farmers should have a market of people and customers that they can sell their products to with someone in between to do the distribution for them. And that has to be that black middle class and black intelligence, the intelligentsia, the black intelligentsia, that has to set that up and make it happen. We can't just sit back, Tom, and continue doing what we're doing. It's an embarrassment. I mean, it's to the people of that Black Wall Street back in the day of Rosewood and in other parts of the country that were operating under much more stringent conditions have to be turned over in their grave in embarrassment to see us doing what we're doing now. And they're thinking, hey, wait a minute, we did a lot more with a lot less. You guys have a lot more, so why aren't you doing more?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Jimmy, we're going to have to, um, as Malcolm said something a long, time ago, back in the heyday, he said, there will be no black white unity before there's black unity. And at the end of the day, I don't believe there's any way that we figure this out until we figure out what is it that we're going to have to fix, correct, with all the different experiences and priorities that we have, because we don't think or act like a monolithic people. But, quite frankly, Jimmy, we are probably more loyal than any other demographic that you can find in
Yes,
this
we are.
country, considering our political decisions, considering, what who we will forgive and what we will forgive them for. I mean, whether you talk about the pastor, whether you're talking about political candidates, whomever it is you talk about, we are a very forgiving people.
We are
We
very
have got to
forgiving.
use that. We have got to use that for our own benefit again.
Well, Tom, I'll say this along the lines of Malcolm X. It's very difficult, and this is why I don't really put a great deal of stock into what other people think. And I've always been that way, and it's for a reason. I used to be very egotistical, and I guess to some degree I still am. I never had much patience for people that I thought were less intelligent than myself. I've kind of grown out of that a little bit. But the reality is that other people cannot respect you and value you. They're not going to ever accept you as their equal. Waiting around for white people to accept you as their equal when they look at you and all they think about is thug life, how pathetic you are, welfare babies, baby mamas, baby daddies, and all they see is chaos. How in the world are they going to value you, respect you, or look up to you? It's not going to happen. So stop worrying about getting white people to accept you. That should no longer be our goal. The goal of civil rights back then to have white people treat you fairly. Okay, that was a goal then. Now it doesn't even matter until you start doing the things to add worth and value to yourself. That's when other people will respect you and value what you have to say and what you do when they see value. They don't see value in the black community now. All they see is chaos.
Jimmy, I think you hit on something that I'm going to have to agree with, but it starts with respect, and I believe that that starts at home. And when I say that, you have to respect yourself.
Yeah.
You have to respect your own community before anybody else will. Once you get that respect, then you have unity. You're able to build unity among your people. And once you're able to build unity through respect for self, then you're able to build a power base. More than just a voting political power base, but a self esteem that is going to dictate to you that your community is first, your household is first. But there's an old African proverb that says, there is no me without we. And until we understand that there is no me, I can't be as successful as we are. And until we begin to figure out, not that everybody is going to have the economics of a LeBron James or a Michael Jordan. I'm not talking about that.
Right.
But we are only as solid as our weakest link.
Well,
So we can't just throw everybody out, even though we can't account for everybody, but we do have to build our own community. And the foundation of that is our economy. Because if we can't find one black owned gas station to fill our car up, and most folk have cars, if we can't find one place to buy
right.
clothes, because we wear a lot of clothes, if we can't find a couple of places where we could eat that are investing back into our communities, because most of the businesses that are in predominantly black communities are taking their profits to
Oh,
their own
leave.
community and not
Right.
reinvesting it in
That
ours.
money goes, it gets sucked out of the community time. It goes into somebody else's community, and it's not reinvested back into yours.
So
And
we've
that,
got to do better.
we have to do
And so
better,
the
Tom.
question, the how part, Jimmy, that's a difficult conversation. But I
Well,
would say
let's
one
take the
thing we've
last
got to
couple of
do.
minutes, Tom, to talk about the how part. So we have a major obstacle we have to overcome, and that is trust with each other. I don't
True.
know if that stems from the low self-esteem or not having enough respect for each other, but we have to stop seeing each other as someone that I need to attack or be against or afraid of, and start learning to trust each other. We can't even put our few dollars together to do some good because everyone's thinking that someone's going to steal the money or we're going to not do right with the money. And so this lack of trust that we have with each other prevents us from coming together. And every generation of black people starting over from scratch. We at some point have to transfer some wealth forward, and that means that we have to be able to generate some wealth. And the only way we're going to do that is working together. The wealth of America and the wealth of the West is all built on investments. Very few people start a business by themselves and grow into a multinational, multi-billion dollar company. Very seldom does that happen. Or if they do build a successful company, somewhere along the way, they turn the company over to someone else to manage it, and they bring in investors to help fund the expansion. That's how they get the critical mass that makes them even more successful by selling off most of the business and owning a part of it. You know, Bill Gates started Microsoft, but he brought on other friends to help him get it off the
Right.
ground. He may own 25, 21, somewhere in the 20% range of the stock, but that 20% is worth 60, 70 billion dollars versus if he had just gone along, he could have 100% of the business and not be worth very much at all.
True. Very true. Relationship capital, image, and when somebody else shapes and controls your image, which is a huge problem within our community. Every time you turn the TV on, every time you go see a motion picture film, somebody else, on the most part, is shaping your brand.
And Tom, the other thing that we have to overcome here, man, is part of how the churches operate, but it's not just the churches. I mean, I remember years ago, what's this guy's name? Something Frazier. You may know, remember him. Um,
E. Franklin Frazier. You talking about the author or who?
the author, speaker.
Yeah, E. Franklin Frazier.
Okay. Um, so I went and listened to him. He has some really good things to say, very motivating, uplifting. I went to his website, saw a couple of his videos. But here's a disappointment, Tom, is that you say the right thing, but you're
Wait a minute. Is
promoting.
this is this guy is this guy still living or is he deceased? Was this like an early 20th century guy
No, this is
or
maybe
was?
about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. Um,
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking he's still
It's,
living.
it's, it's it's not George Frazier, is it? the author who wrote the books on networking, the power of networking, George Frazier. That are we
That
talking that
that may
Frazier? We
be
talking E.
him.
Franklin Frazier?
No, it may
We're
be
not
George
talking. We're not.
Frazier.
We're not. I don't think we're talking about George Frazier, the fighter. So
No. It's a motivational speaker, so maybe George Frazier. Um,
okay,
and I think he was every now and then was coming to Dallas to they would have a convention here, or there were a few
George
conventions
Frazier.
around
That's
the country.
George. That's George. Yeah, that's George Frazier.
Okay, see, and then I'm thinking that someone invited me to one of his. I had a customer who was a big follower of his,
Success runs. The author of Success runs in our race.
and when he came to town, I guess she was flying here and wanted to give me a ticket or something to come. And Tom, here's my disappointment: is that you're saying the right thing, but you're promoting you. You're selling your books, your videos. You're selling access to you, and the people who want to come get under your umbrella have to kind of pay in to get under that umbrella. So in the end, you're not really promoting black businesses as much as you're promoting you and the success that hopefully you can bring them. And although I don't know if I've seen any evidence of that. So our churches and our people who have the voice of the people need to encourage folks to come together where, like Zig Ziglar would say, do something for somebody who can't do anything for you in return. That is the greatest way to help and feel good about doing good for someone else. Do it for someone who has no clue that you're doing it for, or who are in no position to do anything in return for you. And if you can do that, then you truly are giving of yourself. But for people who say, "Well, I can help you, Tom, but yeah, it's gonna cost you $9.95. You gotta come join me and sign up and buy my books and do all this." That's not to say anything bad about Mr. Frazier. I mean, he's just making a living like the next person. But it's just
Right.
disappointing when I expect that I'm going to hear something about economic development of the black people, and what I'm really getting is a message of "buy my stuff, make me rich" kind of a message. So
Yeah, he has a business to run, and I think his bread and butter is his conference. So I know he has a lot of speakers, a lot of entrepreneurs who get together, go to this conference every year. His conference this year was a virtual conference. I didn't really get a chance to really participate this year, but he's had a very successful conference. I think close to about 20 some odd years, and I know he has helped a lot of people. I don't. I mean, I've met him. I don't know him well personally, even though I've met him in a couple of times, been to his conference, and I know it has helped a lot of people. But obviously, everything isn't for everyone.
right,
But to your point, we have got to choose self first. Uh, to our prior conversations, we've got to rebuild our families because I don't believe, have very much potential for economic capital until we rebuild and have stronger families, which means we're going to have to increase the marriage rate within the black community. Because, I mean, by itself, if 75% of our households are headed by single females, or with children that are headed by single females, if we can just bind half of those into a two income family, what does that do for the
they'll do a
economics
great deal for the
in your
economics. Yes.
community? But getting back to the point, Jimmy, yeah, there are no easy answers here. I think that there are going to probably be some tough answers in terms of what's going to get us to reaggregate our resources economically and otherwise to rebuild our economy, because we're giving not the black dollar doesn't bounce once, which means we're giving
No,
practically
Tom, it
all of
does
our money
not.
to
There's
other
no
communities.
ripple effect with the black dollar. We know how that works with other communities, the Asian community especially. When $1 goes in and it creates $40 of economic activity before any of it goes out. They're very good with spending money with each other, and our money doesn't even, like I said, there's not one ripple. We spend most of our money with other people rather than with ourselves. So this is the price that you pay if to put it, it's like Tony Brown gave the example that if you have $100 and I have $100, you spend 95 of your dollars with me, and I have $195, and now you have five. There's just
Right,
no way that you can catch up with me wealth wise. You can't
right.
have the same house I have. You can't drive the same car I drive. You can't employ anybody. And in fact, you can't even have the same IQ that I have because you're foolish enough to give most of your money away When I'm on the receiving end, I figure out how to take your money and
Yeah,
give you chicken, cheap products in return.
true. So self-esteem, man, strong self-identity, restoring that, Jimmy. One thing is we've got to do is we've got to turn the TV off. We talked about this so many times.
Education, man.
Uh,
You got to turn the TV
yeah,
off,
yeah,
Tom.
we've got to get our head into the books and get our heads out of the TV, because really that is where most of our behavior is being shaped. The church obviously has always been the bedrock of what's happening within the black
Well,
community.
I
The
wish the
question
preacher would
is,
spiritualize this, Tom. Come to church on Sunday and say, hey, God told me to tell you folks to wake up and start getting right. And outlining some of this stuff. Stop just selling access to heaven and start, really talking about morality and doing things, because it's the doing that we're not doing. That's what's hurting us. If we start doing it, it may not be that, it may be difficult at first, but it will get a lot easier once you have a pattern of doing it. But if we
Jimmy,
if we
this is one basic thing that everybody who is listening now or who will be listening in the future can do. For basic goods and services, find someone within your community to steer your money away from. What does that look like? For me, that would look like, I can choose. For instance,
well, I know you support a lot of black
with my
businesses
house, my
purposely.
real estate my real
Right,
estate agent looked like me, except it was a she. The guy who fixes my air conditioning
right.
looks like me. The guy who does my plumbing, it took me a little while, but I finally found someone who looks like me. Someone who does contract work looks like me. It's a little bit harder, but I found a grocery store, not full service, doesn't have everything, but you know what? Put some money in there. Find restaurants who are run by people within your community. We've got to do it one step at a time.
Well, I agree, Tom. That is true. And so we've gone over our time limit by a few minutes, but it's okay. So let's wrap up. We didn't get anybody on the chat line this week, and I'm just wondering if everybody has election fatigue, and but hopefully they will come back next week and join us. And because we love hearing the comments from our viewers. Also, like I said, the phone number is published here. Feel free, you can give us a call 5 minutes after the show starts and join in the conversation, or you can just type in your message. We start the chat line 5 minutes early before the show even starts. So if you want to just submit a question for us to deal with when the show starts, you can actually submit your questions early. With that being said, Tom, I'm going to give you the last word to close us out.
We want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. Join us every Wednesday at 9 o'clock p.m. Central to have a conversation with some of the most provocative topics in our issue, in our community. We want to thank you for joining us this evening. We want to thank you for listening to us. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already. Feel free to submit any ideas that you have in terms of topics, things that you would like us to address. More than anything else, continue to look inward. We've got a lot of issues that we have to resolve, but at the end of the day, it starts with the man and the woman in the mirror. So continue to fight the good fight. Jimmy, any last words?
No, that's it. You did a good job. Subscribe, like, and share. And thank you very much.
Have a good evening, everyone.